Hey, everybody, so excited to be able to be with you again today at church, at home. And it's so incredible that we're able to celebrate together. Even though we're in our homes and we're in different places today, we're still celebrating as one church across this whole region. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're finishing up our series on Life on Point. And everyone has been created on purpose and with a purpose. And we want to actively engage in living our life in a purposeful, on point way. Talked about goals, we've talked about vision. Last week we talked about discipline. And I think I got more people asking me what I actually eat for breakfast. You'll have to ask me directly, but it was a fun service last week, and hope you enjoyed it. So we want to go on talk about, and this is the final day that we're talking about Life on Point, final service, and I want to share with you what I think it could have been the first, but I think is really the pivotal key in living our life on point, living our life with purpose, living our life on point. I think, and to do that, I want to look at the lives of two different people in the Bible, because deep within every one of us, I think, is this real craving for significance. You may not describe it that way, but I would describe it this way: as feeling like there was a reason that I was living, or feeling that my life was not pointless, that there was some reason beyond my own self, but there was some reason that I existed, some reason that my life has been lived, this meaning and significance in life. I think everybody has that desire deep within them to live a life of significance and live a life of meaning. And as we do that, we sometimes get distracted. We forget the way to significance. I know for many people, and for me, for many years for myself, I know that I've confused the whole idea of being successful with the idea of being significant. And success has this whole series of, if you will, scorecards, and whether I've accomplished enough things, and whether people have approved me enough, and that whole idea of success can be very tiring and exhausting. But the search for significance and the craving for significance is something different, and I think there's a different way that we find that. And so I want to take you to the Bible today. And in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there's this story, which is the first 2/3 of the Bible, and all happened prior to Jesus living here on earth. And there's this story of a guy, his name is Ahithophel. Ahithophel, which is kind of a weird name, but Ahithophel was a senior advisor, a senior counselor to one of the kings of his day. A king by the name of that king was Absalom, or a rising political star. His name was Absalom. He had been an advisor to the previous administration, the administration of David, and now he was an advisor to Absalom. And he was really, really good at his job. He was very, very good. People listened to him. People considered his opinion, his counsel really, really valuable and really spot on. In fact, if you read here, we're just going to touch just a couple of verses, 3 verses in relation to him. In 2 Samuel 16:23, New Living Translation says, Absalom followed Ahithophel's advice, just as David had done. For every word Ahithophel spoke seemed as wise as though it had come directly from the mouth of God. So he was really, really successful. In 2 Samuel 17, verse 14, it says, Then Absalom and all the men of Israel said, Hushai's advice is better than Ahithophel's. So there was a second senior advisor who came onto the scene, and his advice in this situation was better, or the others thought it was better. So if we can phrase it this way, Ahithophel wasn't as popular, he wasn't as successful on this particular occasion, for the Lord had determined to defeat the counsel of Ahithophel, which really was the better plan, so that he could bring disaster on Absalom, in 2 Samuel 17, verse 14. And then the last verse, just to give you a full context to this story, is when Ahithophel, this is 2 Samuel 17, verse 23, says, when Ahithophel realized that his advice had not been followed, so he wasn't approved of, his advice wasn't successful, they weren't listening to him, he saddled his donkey, went to his hometown, set his affairs in order, and hanged himself. He died there and was buried in the family tomb. This story about Ahithophel is a cautionary tale. Ahithophel did not find his significance in his purpose. He found his significance in his popularity. So as long as people liked what he said, listened to what he said, and he got their approval, Ahithophel felt significant. But when we look for significance in the approval of other people, we go down a really dangerous path, because approval, and as you know, in the day and age we live in right now, a cancel culture, a culture where everyone has an opinion and everyone voices the opinion. And it doesn't seem to matter some days what you say. You're either right or wrong, or you're both, or you're not. It's hard to do the right thing. That when we're living for the approval of others, we're trying to get our significance by those likes we get, those follows we get, those agreement we get with people in conversation. When we live that way, we're not going to find significance. We're going to be really, really disappointed. I heard somebody say one time that those who live for the approval of people will die without it. And that was certainly the case with Ahithophel. He died. Once he no longer got approval, his significance was gone. Once he was no longer popular, once he was no longer listened to, his approval, his significance, his sense of significance, his craving for significance was entirely gone. And so he went out and killed himself. Really tragic. Really tragic. It's a tragic tale of what happens when our search for significance, we try to fill it with the approval and the likes of other people. The second story that just to give us some context today as we're talking about our search for significance is the story of John the Baptist. And we're going to read a little bit here, John chapter 3, verse 26 to 30, because there's a similar vein to this story, but a different response. So John's disciples came to him, verse 26, New Living Translation. So John's disciples came to him and said, Rabbi, which means teacher, the man you met on the other side of the Jordan River, the one you identified as the Messiah, is also baptizing people. He's doing the same thing you are. And everybody's going to him instead of coming to us. Do you see the similarity between him and Ahithophel? People were listening to Hushai's advice rather than Ahithophel's. And here, now they're following Jesus instead of following John. And John replied, no one can receive anything unless God gives it from heaven. You yourselves know how plainly I told you I am not the Messiah. I'm only here to prepare the way for him. It's the bridegroom who marries the bride, and the bridegroom's friend is simply glad to stand with him and hear the news. Therefore, I'm filled with joy at his success. He must become greater and greater, and I must become less and less. See, here's the difference between John and Ahithophel. Ahithophel was trying to find significance in popularity. He was finding his significance in approval and likes, where John was finding his significance in his purpose. And John understood that he didn't need people following him. He wasn't here to gather a crowd. He was here to prepare a way. And that really important understanding of his purpose allowed him, by following his purpose, the approval and the popularity and those outward trappings of success didn't affect him, because he knew what his purpose is. I think that if we understand this right, that we realize that the pursuit of purpose is what satisfies the craving for significance. It's the pursuit of purpose that satisfies that craving in us for significance. So often we're pursuing approval instead of pursuing purpose. And as a result, we get really, really disappointed, and we feel really meaningless, and we feel like our meaning is gone in life because nobody likes us, or not the right people like us, or because of all sorts of reasons surrounded by our approval or governed by our approval by other people. And so John gives us this great example in what I think is a difficult situation. I don't know how I would have dealt with in that situation, because I like to be liked, as probably you do. I like people to like me, and you like people to like you. It's not that we don't want people to like us, but we need to pursue our purpose, that thing we were created for, that reason we live. And if we pursue that above everything else, then we find that craving for significance is satisfied. I want to just give you some suggestions today as we go through this message, because I think the big question to me that comes up is, that's great talking about purpose, but I don't know what my purpose is. Finding our purpose and discovering who God really created us to do and what he created us to accomplish and what he created us to be is absolutely vital in fulfilling our purpose in life and being satisfied with our significance, satisfying that craving for our significance. And so I want to give you just three thoughts in these last few minutes. I just want to give you three thoughts that'll help you maybe identify your purpose in life. First one is this: what gives you joy? What gives you joy? In Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 10, the last half of the verse, Nehemiah makes this statement. He says, "Don't be dejected and sad, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." And you know, when we connect with the purpose that God has, you see, God created you with your purpose in mind. So he gave you the gifts and the talents and the skills and the appetites and the desires that lead you in the direction of what you were created for. And when you do that, the joy of the Lord, that sense that you're doing what you were created to be, that joy that comes in your life, is increased. And when we think about, just on a tangible level, when we think about what gives us joy, it helps us understand what our purpose is. Some of you who know me a little bit know that I'm actually an introvert. In fact, when my wife met me, she did some things to kind of embarrass me initially, because she thought, this is this shy farmer boy. I'm going to bring him out and get him out of his shell. And I was shy and I'm very introverted. And being introverted, that doesn't mean that I don't love people. I absolutely love people. It just means that when I'm with people, it's not a recharging situation. It's a giving out of myself into that situation. But I know about myself, as I've watched my purpose, I know that the thing that relating to people, the thing that gives me more joy than anything else in my life is when I'm out with somebody, or even today, when I'm sharing something with somebody, I'm encouraging somebody, and all of a sudden I see a shift in their thinking. I see that my words have helped them. I see that there's been clarity that comes. I see that they go, oh wow, that's right. That helps me. That gives me some wisdom. I know what to do. I just get so much joy out of that, and that's a hint to me, because it gives me joy when I'm with people and I'm able to give them wisdom and I'm able to give them insight. I'm able to help them become who they were created to be a little bit farther along. So I know that my purpose is related to helping people, because that gives me so much joy, even though I'm not a big people person by default, but I am by purpose. I love helping people understand who God created them to be, helping people understand. That's why I'm loving this message series personally, because I love helping people become who they were created to be. So that gives me joy. The second thing that I think is really helpful is if you ask this question: what aligns with your innate purpose? With your innate abilities? What aligns with your innate abilities? So let me put it this way, in a different way. What comes easily to you? What comes easily to you? What are those things that you just do them easily? Those might be hints at what your purpose is. I love this phrase that says, "for such a time as this." When we started into Church at Home, I realized that in some ways that my whole life, I felt like I'd been prepared for this, that God had designed me to be able to do this well, because I've just always been really good with technology. Technology has been simple and understandable to me. It's just an innate thing. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be a technological whiz or technological in doing things technologically, but it gives me an idea that my purpose allows me to use those things and to use those innate abilities of understanding those kinds of subjects and understanding those things, and use that to help people. And so this is I think, just a really cool thing when we begin to see the things that come easily to us. There's some things that come easily to my wife that just don't come easily to me. There's some things that come easily to you that don't come easily to the other people in the room right now. But they're a little hint at what your purpose is, and I encourage you to think about them. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, I love what the Apostle Paul writes, and he says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago." It's like he's saying, long ago, God prepared us for all these things we'd be able to do. So he gave us the right tools, the right abilities, the right giftings, so we'd be able to do that. And that's in keeping and in fulfilling the purpose, because the pursuit of our purpose will satisfy the craving for significance. The third question just want to ask or suggest that you ask today to help find your purpose is, what do people say they appreciate about you? A lot of times the people in our world see things in us that we don't see in ourselves and that we don't hear in ourselves. And I love it when we get honest feedback and honest encouragement. I think that's why the gift of encouragement is such a powerful tool in the church and in our relationships, because encouragement not only helps us go forward, but it helps clarify our understanding of the purpose God has for us. And so when we get that clarified and people give us honest, authentic encouragement and tell us what they appreciate about us, then we're able to kind of clarify and refine our understanding of our purpose so that we can walk and do those things that people appreciate, because it helps us know what we're called to do. In 1 Corinthians chapter 16, just these last few verses of the in this chapter, as Paul does in so many of the letters, he writes this little word of encouragement and acknowledgement. He says, you know that Stephanas and his household were the first of the harvest of believers in Greece. They're spending their lives in service to God's people. I urge you, dear brothers and sisters, submit to them and others like them who serve with such devotion. I'm very glad that Stephanas, Fortunatus, Achaeus have come here. They've been providing the help you weren't here to give me. They've been wonderful encouragement to me as they have been to you. You must show your appreciation to all who serve well. Paul's just saying, hey, I appreciate this about them. And he gives this hint that that's part of what they were called to do, that they're spending their lives serving God, doing what others appreciate in them. Finding our purpose is simple, just not easy. But I encourage you today that as you just take some of these steps, that we become like John, who lives life in pursuit of our purpose in order to satisfy the craving of significance. Let's not allow ourselves to pursue other things, popularity, likability, all those things that give us a temporary feeling of feeling good about ourselves, when in reality, the only thing that will really fulfill that craving for significance is when we understand our purpose and begin to pursue that with our whole heart. My prayer for you today is that you would see, and today you would find out a little bit more and understand a little more about the purpose God called you to, so that you can pursue that with your whole heart and know that your life is important. There's people who are going to be changed only because you're pursuing your purpose. I want to pray for you this today, just before we go, and I turn it on to the next part of the service. Father, today I pray for every person watching, every person listening. I pray, God, that they would hear you speaking to them, God, reminding them of why they are who they are, the purpose for which they were created, and God, that they would be able to continue to pursue that with their whole heart and realize that as they pursue that, they're going to know that their life has meaning, that they have significance. In Jesus' name, amen.